Hi, everyone. My name is Kimberly Schwartzman, and I'm the team captain for Macalester Solar District Cup team. We were tasked with designing a solar plus storage system for the Lummi Nation. So let's get into it. Okay. All right, so the team was split into 4 different subgroups that met on their own, and then we came together to meet bi-weekly to collaborate with the full group. All of us are undergraduates at Macalester, which is a liberal arts institution, and so many of us are also double majors. We believe our interdisciplinary education helps prepare us to tackle this project from multiple perspectives. The Lummi Nation district was split into 2 main parts, a northern project area and a southern area. From the Lummi Nation strategic energy plan, as a means to satisfy current goals, the Lummi Nation has identified solar as a future source of energy production. Oh, here we go. Okay, so here you can see that the 3 main goals include more energy self-sufficiency, economic self-sufficiency, and to reduce carbon emissions from fossil fuel energy production. Our proposal helps the Lummi Nation reach these goals by adding more distributed energy resources, including battery storage, to the grid, and by replacing the current mix of the PSE energy mix, which is about 50% fossil fuels. We can offset the pollution and emissions that would have been produced. And our economic plan has high customer savings, a competitive PPA price, and the ability to purchase and control the system up front. And we were clear in our intent to reduce the carbon footprint for the development of the project, so we chose to source as much of our equipment from local manufacturers and distributors in Bellingham.
So there were several equipment factors that we considered in selecting the equipment that we ended up with. So the solar modules that we chose were manufactured by Silfab, which is actually based in Bellingham and has a headquarters there. They are 330 watt modules, and they're also distributed by Platt in Bellingham. The inverters are also distributed by Platt. They're made by SolarEdge. And so both of these equipment are sourced from local distributors in an effort to reduce the carbon emissions of transporting them. Next slide, please. So in addition to the equipment, we had several factors that we considered in selecting which sites to add installations to. Obviously, we can't add solar to everywhere that we would like to. So we prioritized solar resource availability or irradiance, also just roof area size to maximize the amount of panels that we can put. I avoided obstructions and shades, such as large trees, obviously, and we also prioritized maintenance accessibility so that once the panels are in place, they can be easily accessed to be maintained. There were a couple of sites that we considered, but we were not able to include because we prioritized a community solar project with additional social implications, which we'll get into in a little bit. The sites that we do propose include 4 rooftop buildings. The Silver Reef Casino has a 1 megawatt system on top of it. And then we also proposed the rooftop on Wexlium Community Building, the Lummi Youth Academy, and the Little Bear Creek Elder Home. The solar ground mounts that I mentioned are made up of 3 ground mount arrays in the Mackenzie Residential District that total about 176 kilowatts. Next slide, please. So I'll just get into a little bit of the specifics of each site. The Silver Reef Casino, we proposed 2 arrays. You can see on the right labeled A and B. The total 1 megawatt of a system, which will be about 13% energy offset to the grid. This building has a very high irradiance. There are no large obstructions around and very large roof area. Second, I mentioned the Wexlium Community Building. We propose a 98 kilowatt system for one side of this roof, contributing 9% energy offset to the grid. Third, we have the Lummi Youth Academy. Again, just one side of the building for efficiency purposes. We propose a 19.8 kilowatt system here. And finally, the Little Bear Creek Elder Home, we propose a 26.7 kilowatt system on the southern side of this building. The community solar in the Mackenzie Residential District, as I mentioned, it's 3 arrays that make up 176 kilowatts. Since these will be 6 feet above the ground, we anticipate that the community could contribute urban gardens or wildflowers underneath the panels, providing a little bit of a lift to the community and bringing the residents together, in addition to clean energy. And so here's just our little summary of the conceptual system proposal, including the size, the annual production, and the PPA price, the energy offset. This table includes the K through 12 school, which has existing solar panels on top of it, which we're not including in our proposed total system.
So in addition to the solar systems that Ali just outlined, we proposed 4 battery systems as well. We chose to go with the Enphase IQ Battery 10 because of its a lithium-ion battery chemistry. It has a high efficiency and of its easier connection to the grid. And of the 4 systems that we proposed, 3 had positive savings per kilowatt hour, and when using a peak shaving model. The Ferry had negative savings, so we only modeled half of the load, so we don't recommend that. We used the provided heat maps to validate our system plans. The southern part of the peninsula was satisfied by 1 substation in the north, and the total KVA was available was around 1100 kilowatt amps. And as you can see on the left here, the locations where we added systems were maximized around 400 to 500. And this is kind of summarized in this table here. So the community solar and the other buildings added up to be less than the maximum amount available KVA. And our total usage is around 465 kilowatt amps, which is about 42% of the total hosting capacity, which we assume is reasonable and that we are in the clear. And keep in mind that with battery storage and peak shaving, these will help decrease demand at the loads. And for the casino, there weren't any heat maps that we could use, so we assumed that we could add a 1 megawatt system to the grid. And if this is not the case, then the design can be reevaluated to a smaller system.
Okay, so moving on to the financial analysis. First, we wanted to really cover the savings model, and we'll focus on the Silver Reef Casino. So using a SAM model provided to us, we identified an agreeable PPA of about 6 cents per kilowatt hour with a 2.5% annual escalator, which is far below the current utility price at 12 cents per kilowatt hour. And it also has a lower annual escalation, about 0.5% less. So this kind of totals into an average of about $3,000 in annual customer savings, which we can see in the graph on the right with the upward trend. Additionally, we have listed the PPA for each individual system, and we see that, of course, after the casino, the PPA does tend to rise well above the utility price, though I think it's important for us to understand that the casino system size is much larger than any other of the systems in our model. And so therefore, while the PPA for these other systems is well above the utility price, this ultimately balances out with the savings generated from the casino's much lower PPA. Next slide, please.
Hi, I'm going to cover the savings metrics. So like Kyle mentioned before, we see that our PPA, especially modeling the casino, is below some of the utility prices. We can also take a look at the internal rate of return that we see from a lot of these, since all these give back a positive rate of return. We see a range from the casino going from 3.87% to 36% with the community solar, which just goes to show that implementing the system, there would be a large amount of cash coming back from implementing it and comparing it to the utility price overall with the system. Next slide. We also see that the Lummi Nation really wanted to focus on the upfront purchase option, and we calculated all the options for that. And we also see a higher rate of return for these, and we can see the purchase prices, and we see that it ranges from 8.7% and up to 39%, which is higher than the previous rate of return. So we think this is a great investment for the Lummi Nation when it comes to cost wise, when it comes to what they're already paying and how much they could be saving if they do make a purchase option after 6 years. Next.
Okay.
So now we will move on to the development summary. So starting off with permitting codes and land use regulations, we must obtain a building permit from the Lummi Nation Planning Department for our roof-mounted projects, which necessitates compliance with the Uniform Building Code and Uniform Fire Code, as well as the Washington State Energy Code. For a ground-mounted project, we would need to clarify with the planning department on regulations for solar PV systems, but at the moment, our best interpretation is that ground-mounted panels comprise an industrial land use, meaning that we would need to rezone the parcels in the Mackenzie subdivision where we plan to build. There are also impervious surface and setback requirements for industrial zones that we must comply with. Lastly, we will need to obtain an interconnection permit from Puget Sound Energy, a process which necessitates several engineering studies. Next, we analyze environmental and other site characteristics, and we anticipate no problems here. The ground mounts fall outside the 100-year floodplain and affect no wetlands or other critical habitats. No historic locations will be affected. Lastly, soil properties were also considered, and we anticipate no need to accommodate for sandy or corrosive soils. However, we would anticipate completing a more in-depth soil analysis to confirm this. And then lastly, for master plan compliance, our development helps fulfill the strategic energy plan goal of identifying tribal facilities for solar in a way that also aligns with the Lummi Nation community plan. We chose to maximize roof space and open space in already developed areas, which helps preserve agricultural, forested, and ecologically sensitive lands. Additionally, the community plan identifies the goal of concentrating development along Slater Road and other major transit corridors, and our Silver Reef Casino subproject provides a transit accessible employment opportunity for residents. Next slide, please. So moving on to construction staging needs, most areas where we plan to develop have ample open space available. The exceptions are shown on the screen, the project site at the Mackenzie subdivision and the wastewater treatment plant. At these sites, trees may need to be removed in the indicated areas to make room for temporary storage and access roads. Next slide, please. So moving on to community outreach and energy equity, the developer acknowledges that development in this community needs to be approached in a sensitive manner, and that starts with building trust and transparency right from the beginning. We will take steps to ensure procedural and distributive justice are embodied at every turn of the development process. For community engagement, we will inform the public about the project and collect feedback through many channels, including surveys and focus groups. We will also have engineers visit the project sites so that residents can have their questions and concerns about the physical characteristics of the project addressed. Additionally, the developer plans to sponsor Lummi Solar Days at the K-12 School and Youth Academy, providing programming on the science of solar energy and job opportunities in the solar industry. And then lastly, education around the financial and energy equity benefits of this project will be an important part of engagement. Indigenous people suffer some of the highest rates of energy insecurity in the US, and 22% of Lummi Nation residents live below the poverty line. By offering a PPA rate that is on aggregate much lower than the utility rate, we hope our project will help reduce energy burden in the reservation. And additionally, this will also, the increase in energy autonomy will also help buffer against utility rate increases in the future. Overall, through our community engagement strategy, we hope that we can shift perceptions of the project from foreignness initially to ownership. And then next slide, please. And then lastly, here's our project timeline and construction schedule. Some risks anticipated in construction include supply chain disruptions for solar PV inputs, which has the potential to slow the project timeline, and thus we have budgeted for extra time for construction. Overall, this timeline was based on estimated timelines for permitting and interconnection provided by the Lummi Nation Planning Department and Puget Sound Energy.